Tonight's edition of the iMore Show is brought to you by Audible. For your free audiobook download, visit audiblepodcast.com/iMore. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rene Ritchie. It is September 19, 2012. Tonight, we are talking iOS 6 released and the iPhone 5 incoming. This is the iMore Show. And joining me tonight, the always interesting, always ravishing, always bearded Seth Clifford. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm bearded also, but it's simply because I have not had time to shave in the last few nights, days, mornings, whatever.
That's okay. It suits you.
I'm going to be a little bit drunk tonight, Seth, not because of liquor, but because of lack of sleep. I ended up writing this incredibly long review for iOS 6, and it cost me the sleeps.
Yeah, I know. You always go for it, and I always feel bad. Like I wish I could help you, but you've got to fight that fight yourself.
No, as you pointed out to me on Twitter, I could easily have a real job.
Yeah, there's always that alternative.
I'm complaining to Seth, oh, I can't believe it. I have to write this review. And Seth's like, you know what I would give to be able to just write a review of iOS 6 instead of all the crap I have to put up with all day?
That's not exactly how it came out. I think I offered to trade jobs, and you quickly realized the folly of your comments.
Yeah. Have you seen The Expendables 2 yet?
No, I saw Expendables 1. I haven't been to the movies in a while.
Expendables 2 is way better than Expendables 1 because this time I think the actors are in on the joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's sort of...
That's good.
Yeah, you'll understand this little relationship that we have more clearly when you watch that movie, Seth.
Okay.
This thing that we do. This little dance. Right. So iOS 6 is out. It's been released. It is available to the masses. It is ours. Are you running it?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
And every time a new version of iOS comes out, there are always bugs, there are always issues. People think it's the worst one ever. But I clearly remember having loads of problems with iOS 5.0, with iOS 4.0, with iOS 3.0, and iOS 2.0. I think there's just a 0.0 syndrome, especially if you update the very first day.
Yeah, it seems to be that there are some little kinks that have yet to be worked out. But what's strange is that some of the kinks that we saw today that we were hearing about, that people were talking about, were things that weren't in the betas. So it wasn't like things were broken and didn't get fixed. It was that somehow in the release, the major release, something kind of went weird. You know, something turned in a way that it shouldn't have, and there were all kinds of little glitchy things. But I don't know. Do you think it's probably due to the fact that, so many people are downloading it and maybe they're missing bits somewhere, and so things aren't quite working out?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest problems today was a Wi-Fi connection error. People tried to connect to Wi-Fi after the update, and they got an intercept page. Basically, the page that you get when you go to a Starbucks or a Panera Bread or some place that has Wi-Fi you have to sign in for. And that actually wasn't a local problem. What happened is Apple has this Whisper... it's a capture portal, basically. The thing is that, for example, if you're on a website and you go in Starbucks and you type something, it'll bring up the Starbucks sign-in page. It'll say you have to sign in for our internet. But if you try to check your mail or you try to check Twitter, it just won't work and you won't know why. So what Apple does is intercept that and present you with this screen so that you know why you can't connect to the internet until you fill this thing out. And unfortunately, it was misfiring. It was intercepting everything, regardless of whether you're on your home network or a business network or even on a Starbucks network. So that... and people didn't know why. People who had had the beta and hadn't even updated yet to the release version were having the same problem. But Apple fixed that, and everyone got on their way, and the mass calamity it was almost like, at the end when the asteroid doesn't hit the Earth. Yeah,
that whole thing erupted while I was eating my dinner. I had wiped my phone and put the release version on, and the phone didn't restore properly the first time from the iTunes backup that I did just prior to trying it. So I had to end up restoring from iCloud. But I guess when the whole thing happened, I was upstairs, so I was kind of scanning Twitter, and when I came back, and I was like, oh god, there's some problem. And then by the time I got through my timeline, I was like, oh, apparently the problem's fixed, so I guess I'm not going to worry about it.
I just had this picture of you walking up to a computer, opening it up, looking at Twitter, seeing there was a problem, quietly just shutting it, walking away, and coming back later when the problem was solved.
That's actually not unlike what happened, because after the first restore didn't work, I just left the phone in the dock, and it was completely dark and wouldn't come on, and I was like, looks like I'm going to have to DFU this one. So I walked upstairs and ate. And then when I came back, everything just decided to work.
Yeah, that's what I was telling people. People kept tweeting me, what do I do? What do I just kept saying DFU restore, DFU restore. I mean, it's surprising how much that, if you can get Georgia to actually put your phone in DFU mode for you, it's completely winning. But anyway, that solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I think also that if everyone tries to update at once, I mean, Apple has a huge network. They have Akamai behind them. I forget what the other big CDN they have behind them in. But there will inevitably be more of us than there is of bandwidths on the internet. And there will be issues connecting to the iTunes Store, connecting to Apple's servers, connecting to their verification authorization servers. There's just a lot of single points of failure along that chain.
Yeah, definitely. And we forget that what we are actually attempting to do is needlessly complex when looked at in the grand scheme of all things human. But we expect these things to just be buttery smooth, and when they're not, we have serious emotional problems attached to them. So it's worth remembering that these are really still complex things that are happening. And yes, other phones do OTA updates, and yes, other phones do things better than the iPhone. But we're talking about millions and millions of bits flying around all at the same time, expecting things to go perfectly, and
bit collision.
Yeah, they don't always work perfectly, but eventually things get sorted out, usually sooner than later.
And what'll happen in a couple days, my mom will call and go, "There's this thing popping up on my iPhone saying update. Is that safe?" Yeah, Mom, it's been a week and a half. You can press that button now. So you've had iOS 6 on your phone for a little while. I have too. Do you mind if we just go through a few of the bullet points and suss them out?
No, let's do it.
All right, so I guess we'll go through the biggest things first. Maps. iOS 6 Maps, rebuilt from scratch. Apple ditched Google. They are no longer married at the map level. They've gone with TomTom as their data provider. They've redrawn all the map art in vector format, so it scales really nicely. Unfortunately, we lose Street View. We gain Flyover. We lose transit directions. We gain turn-by-turn directions. It seems to me like 1.5 steps forward, 2 steps back, and a little sideways.
Yeah, there's a lot of contention surrounding the update to Maps. I personally don't have too many issues with it because of the way that I use Maps. I don't live in an urban area anymore. I live outside an urban area, so transit is not really something I'm going to miss. I was never so much of a fan of Google Maps. I used them because they were there, and I know that I like them better on Android because they've always been better on Android.
Because they get updated on Android.
Right, yeah. I feel like the TomTom maps that have been added, the couple times I've used them have been very good and very responsive in the car, on the phone. I used, turn by turn and got exactly where I needed to be. It was great. The data came through really fast. It didn't seem like everything was tiling and loading and, dipping in and out the way that it sometimes did if you had a, kind of a weak signal while you were driving. And I was playing with Maps actually on the couch the other night on the iPad. And, the 3D is a little bit gimmicky, but it's so smooth and so fluid when you're actually playing with it. And granted, it was on Wi-Fi, so let's call it like it is, but it was a really good experience, and I don't recall enjoying playing with Maps when it was Google Maps. I used them, but I didn't enjoy exploring, and I just figured, let me take a look, let me dive in and see what this is all about. I think if people give it a second, give it a little bit of time, they'll get used to it. Most people won't care. Really, really hardcore Google Maps fans will probably have a Google Maps alternative at some point in the App Store that they can turn to. And I think the vast majority of people are going to be fine with this.
See, I'm not sure I agree with that fully yet. I think this is iMovie and Final Cut Pro X or 10, I'm not sure which one it is, but while those were niche geeky products, this is something that's going to affect my mom and my sister. Apple is fearless about starting things from scratch that aren't feature complete, that aren't fully baked, and then iterating them until they regain most of what they lost and have a much better, more future-proof foundation. But they're doing this with something really important this time. And anyone who does live in an urban area, they're going to be, especially if developers don't fill it, because basically what Apple's doing is they're punting transit directions to developers. They're saying, this is really hard, this is really complicated, we don't have time to do it. People in different areas run these like petty fiefdoms, they're very possessive of their data. We just can't get this done by iOS 6 launch, so we're going to hand you off to third-party apps. And those apps are just updating now, and they're not available in every area, and it's much harder for a small developer to get access to that data than it is someone like Google. And people are going to have problems getting where they used to go, because that, like YouTube, that app is just ripped off their phone. And I think it's going to cost Apple a little bit of luster, but I think it's something they can absolutely recover from. It's just going to be a painful year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was speaking mostly from a position of, my interests and how it's not going to affect me, but there are going to be a lot of people for whom transit, the absence of transit stuff is a big deal, and for whom Street View is a big deal. And they're going to have to seek out that third-party alternative, and if they're not the kind of person who's, I wouldn't even call them a power user, just somebody who's, up enough on what they're doing to go in the App Store and say, let me see if there's an alternative map app that I can download that I would prefer over these maps that are on here. Unless they're that kind of person, it might be jarring. It might be the kind of thing where they get confused and they don't really know what they're looking at because it looks really, really different from the last 4 phones that they had.
See, the reason I know it might be a thing is whenever there is an Apple thing, I get a call from MarketWatch to talk about it. Like when there's antenna gate or whenever anything goes wrong. And of course, this afternoon, I got a call from MarketWatch to talk about the missing maps. And that to me means that it's a mainstream issue, that it's going to be something that's reported widely in the media, and it's going to be something that people pick up on, and it'll be like that traffic or that privacy issue or like antenna gate. And regardless of the actual case, it's going to be a bigger thing. I did test it. I always do a lot of tests before I write a review. And I had 2 different phones, and one was on a popular third-party navigation software, and one was on iOS Maps doing turn-by-turn. And iOS Maps was better. The popular alternative had me go in a circle once, had me go down a dead-end street. iOS Maps was spot on every time. But I think it will really vary. I think certain areas will have great data, and certain areas will have spotty data, and it will eventually get better. But if you're in one of those spotty areas, you're probably going to be frustrated until it does.
Yeah. And I'm still, for me, the jury is still out on how effective this thing is going to be when I do have a spotty data connection, because I'm excited that the new phone will have LTE, and I assume that performance will be enhanced significantly because of that. I don't expect to see a lot of, little data hiccups the way that I've done in the past. I'm really hoping that that's the case, but I've often said, I've always had Navigon or something on my phone, like a native mapping solution, because if I find myself in the middle of nowhere with no service, I want to be able to get out of there. And so I've had stuff that downloads maps locally, but again, that's me planning for that scenario. That's not every normal person who buys an iPhone.
Shifting gears a little bit, we did lose Street View, which I thought was very helpful to find the front of a building or a commercial place that I was going to so I'd recognize it more easily. And we got Flyover instead. And to me, Flyover isn't really a mapping solution. It's more like a simulator. It's like a California adventure ride. I've lost countless hours playing with it, flying around Big Ben and different cities. But to me, it's just not maps yet. I mean, it's technology.
Yeah, it's definitely I think you called it demoware at one point. It's very much a showpiece, but not super useful. And I kind of wish they didn't make such a fuss about it, when Scott Forstall gets up there and is like, and look at this amazing, amazing new thing we've done. And it's like, that's cool. I'm never going to use that in my daily life. I might show somebody that when they say, hey, how's the new phone? But there's a 99.9% chance that I'm never, ever going to use that feature.
It's the thing you show off but never use.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. Otherwise, I think it's beautiful. I think the map tiles are gorgeous. I think that the animations that they use are beautiful. I mean, they pan. It's almost like Michael Bay-esque the way they move you from one map to the other. And it'll get there. I just keep going to the fact that it's going to be painful in the process.
I really like the typography and the overall look of it. I really like the green, street sign directions. Yeah. I like the fact that it is an extremely, extremely simplified interface. There's not a lot of labeling and all kinds of text that's kind of distracting you. And I really like the kind of cool integration where, if you leave the app and you're in something else, you'll still see your directions will pop up for you. If you turn the phone screen off, your directions are still available to you, on your lock screen. There's a lot of cool things that they've done to integrate it at a deeper level that really shows that they were kind of caring for the fact that people are maybe going to be doing other stuff while they're getting directions too.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Sorry, I was just distracted by Twitter, where pCalc developer James Thompson said he was watching the show just to understand how the metric system worked because he's not sure how many stone iOS 6 weighs. I don't know how much it costs in England for £2 of iCloud. I have to get back to him on that. Yeah, so flipping gears, the YouTube app came out as well. YouTube has a replacement app. You can download it from the store. Apple is not making their own video. I mean, it's not like they're going to say, oh, we have 3 iCloud videos. Everyone can watch them. There's a cat on the piano. You guys are fine. They're just not including a YouTube app. It's better for everybody. Like the Maps app, the YouTube app was Google data with an Apple front end. Nobody seemed to care about it. Google couldn't run ads. Apple couldn't get any functionality. So it's gone. It's broken up. It's better for the kids. And Google has put their own app into the App Store. And it's a good app. Google can run their ads. You can do a lot of things. You can't upload, which is fine because iOS 6 still has built-in YouTube uploads in the share sheets. But you can't AirPlay from it. If you press the AirPlay button, all you get is sound. It pops up and says, please use AirPlay mirroring, which you try to use, and then you end up bashing the phone against your skull because it's cropped, stuttery, stammery, and unusable. So I'm not sure how to feel about this app, Seth.
I don't really have a lot of love for YouTube, so my feelings for the app are pretty well defined. I'm not a heavy YouTube user, so I didn't miss it when it left, and I never used it when it was really on the phone. I ended up going to the mobile website more often than not from, following a link or pasting a link in and doing it that way. And since Google redesigned that, it was okay with me. I didn't really care. I have not experienced any of the aggravation that you're speaking of, mostly because I have not re-downloaded the app and installed it. But it is, to my understanding, it's a very popular app. I mean, the omission of it is obviously a strategic move by Apple to distance themselves from Google, and I think people are going to slowly realize when they go to look for it to watch a funny video that it's not there. So it's another point where, okay, now we're implying that somebody is understanding the process enough to say, well, let me go look and see if there's a YouTube app, since there isn't a YouTube app.
That's a good point. I mean, like, if you had the old version and you updated, that icon has just gone from your home screen. I mean, Apple, like in Flyover, I got a call from someone at Mobile Nation saying, how do I navigate Flyover? There's no instructions. And right. The YouTube app is just gone. There's not a pop-up saying YouTube app is gone. You can now go get it from the App Store.
Yeah. This will segue, I'm sure, nicely into some of the other more confusing changes in iOS 6, so I don't want to get ahead of us. But, well, I mean, Passbook, right?
Yes.
Passbook is a featured app. It's on the home screen, and people are not really going to know how to use it because it's not instantly clear. Like, even on the betas, when I was kind of looking at it, it wasn't really clear what you're supposed to do. There's like a little landing screen where you get some information about, hey, this is Passbook and isn't it cool? And if you've seen it, demoed, you're like, oh, I know what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be where my tickets are and all that stuff.
It's the easiest way to get all my passes in one place.
Right, but what is less known that I found out today from somebody on Twitter is that you basically have to just have the apps that are Passbook enabled on your phone, and then Passbook just kind of sucks those things in. That's
actually not true. I had the same misconception, and Guy English corrected me on this, and so did Panzerino, actually.
Please correct me.
Yeah, so what it is, you don't have to have any apps on your phone. If you have apps that can generate Passbook files, that's fine. But basically, Passbook files are resource bundles with a JSON file attached to them. And they can be sent to you in an email link, they can be a web link, or they can be a link generated by an app. And no matter how you get those, when you get that file, it will go into Passbook. So you can go to the Passbook app, get sent to the App Store, download a ticket app, buy a ticket, and it'll send the ticket to Passbook. But you could just as easily hit something in an email or hit something on a website and get Passbook filled up that way.
Huh. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That makes sense, but it's still not clear to the end user.
No. And because because Apple doesn't let anyone do anything before things become official, it went live with nothing in it. It wasn't working. The store wouldn't open. And then finally it opened up with a few apps. And I think that, like you said, there's going to be this misconception that, where's my Starbucks card? I have a Starbucks app. Why is there no Starbucks card in my Passbook?
Yeah. It's going to be probably a steeper learning curve with that. Because I think with the maps, people are like, okay, it's maps, but it's different maps. And with YouTube, it'll be like, hey, where did that app go? Let me go look in the App Store. But Passbook is definitely confusing. I think it's more confusing because people probably have really, really refined, learned behaviors if they are people who use things like their Starbucks app to pay for coffee and stuff like that, if they've already built little mental models of how iPhone transactions are supposed to work, and Apple says, hey, here's this new thing, it's going to work really great, and then you're like, cool, I can't wait to get it, and you open it up and it doesn't seem to do anything, your initial impression is going to be that this is just broken, it's not working.
I have worse for you. So I decided to test out Passbook, and I bought the local movie app. I went and tried to buy a ticket for Mila Jovovich's latest Resident Evil film, and the Movie Place app was abhorrently horrible. It was again one of those UI WebView apps, a very thin wrapper, really atrocious looking, very bad UI. It was basically like using a web page crammed into an app. It was exactly using a bad web page crammed into an app. I purchased my ticket. It printed out the Passbook receipt, and then in big, ugly, non-Apple letters says, this is not a real ticket. This will get scanned and replaced with a real ticket. The Passbook experience was fantastic, but getting the stuff in there was atrocious. And that's that. Whenever things are outside of Apple, as much as we complain about Apple being controlling, when things are outside of their control, we end up having these bad experiences too.
Yeah, and I mean, you can really take that argument both ways and say, like, this is why Apple's control is so great, because when they do it, it all works together and it's fantastic. But the flip side to that coin is Apple is so controlling, so other people can't get access to things, figure out how it's supposed to work, and have it work on launch day.
That's fair.
I mean, that's how it feels to me. It's like, Passbook is the kind of thing that I feel should have been introduced and out there so that when everyone, you know, the phone updating public gets their phone or their iOS 6 update, that makes sense all of a sudden, as opposed to, well, there's going to be a couple of weeks of things kind of coming up to speed, like that.
Turbulence.
It just feels like that's such a forward-facing feature that just shouldn't be this way.
But I'm glad that Apple is doing. There's been a lot of brouhaha over Apple not including NFC in the next iPhone, and I understand that, but it feels like this is still a technology in flux, and we might end up going with NFC. It hasn't caught on yet. Arguably, if Apple did it at an iPhone scale, it would catch on. But it's almost like that Ford thing where they tell you that they have cars that can drive themselves, but they scare the crap out of people. So they have to very carefully, one feature at a time, acclimatize us with this technology. They have to make us comfortable with it and show us the convenience and the value of it. It's not going to be Terminator cars, running over us. And I think this is the same thing. I mean, I have one of those swipe to pay Visa cards, and I'm perpetually worried it's going to drop out of my pocket and someone will swipe to pay a ton of stuff before I get it back. So I understand that you have to really, take this step by step. And with Passbook, the thing for me is I don't want to carry around cards anymore, because even when I carry around the cards, I forget to use them, or they don't remind. And this just reminds you. It pops up on your lock screen. It tells you to use it. Once Passbook has it, it could not be simpler or better. And I think that people will get used to using it, enjoy using it, and Apple can build out the mobile payment structure behind it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very fair and accurate statement. That when you're talking about transactions, you really cannot joke around or take half measures. It's got to be right from the start. And if Passbook isn't right from the start, people are not going to lend it any kind of confidence. And so NFC could be built into everything, but people just might not even decide to use it. They might just opt to have old-fashioned payments because that's what they understand and they feel much more secure that way.
I have cash in my mattress chest, Clifford. You're not getting my cash.
Yeah, well, you're talking about an enormous swath of the population for whom technology is still magic.
Yes.
And this is going to be a big hurdle to get over. And I think that taking it slowly is the right approach. And I feel that Apple, with the massive payment system that they've already got in place, with everyone's Apple ID, is probably taking a cautiously optimistic first couple of steps in that direction, as opposed to, just look, go to your Quickie Mart and look for the terminal and smack your phone against it and hope that the clerk knows what the hell's going on.
Smack your phone to pay. Good show title. Okay, before we move on, I just want to pause for a moment and thank the sponsor of tonight's show. That is Audible, the masters of audiobooks. audiblepodcast.com/iMore. Go there, pick up your free audiobook download. You might be asking, why audiobooks? Well, if you're like me, you sit in front of a computer all day, you use your eyes constantly, you're looking at your iPhone, you're looking at your iPad, you're looking at whatever it is that you are reading, work, home, everywhere. Our eyes are under constant strain. And it's nice just to be able to sit back, to relax, and to listen to an amazing story, whether it's fact or fiction, told by an amazing narrator, whether it's the voice of the author themselves or the voice of a professional actor who just brings the words to life. There are lots of things you can do. You can work while you're doing it if you have to. You can spend your time during a commute. I used to commute 2 hours a day into the office, back to the office. Audible is the only thing that kept me educated, informed, and entertained throughout those commutes. They have a slew of books from the best classics, science fiction, science fantasy, science fact, to the latest bestsellers. They have all the best actors, all the best readers, all the best books. If you want to read about Apple, if you want to read about Google, if you want to read about something that takes your mind off of Apple or Google, just head on over to Audible. That's audiblepodcast.com/iMore. Free audiobook download. Try it, you'll like it, and we'll thank you for your support of the iMore show. So, yes, talking about magical technology, Siri got quite a few improvements too. Siri now knows sports. Siri now knows movies. Siri now knows, what was the third thing? Sports, movies, restaurant reservations. I used it to make restaurant reservations, worked really well. I've used it to find movies. There's some things that flummox me, and we spoke about this when Siri was first introduced. You know, like how there's no feature equality. Siri can read your messages, but not your email. Siri can do things in one area, but not another. And this is the problem I had with Siri now, is that Siri can start reserving me a table and then kick me over to the Open Table app to book a reservation, but I can get every bit of information about a movie or TV show, sorry, about a movie, but it won't let me buy the ticket. So the usefulness ends for me at the point of purchase. It'll tell me it's available on iTunes, but it won't actually send me there to get it. And I don't understand why Apple has these pieces in place, but doesn't always connect the dots. Is it maybe they don't have a partnership in place yet for that?
Yeah, I guess it could be possible. This could just be one of those things where, I mean, we all thought that Siri should be doing more last year.
Yeah.
You know, we figured there are things that should be obvious, things like launching apps. It's like, come on, the stuff is on the phone. This is a no-brainer. And I think that, especially with Siri, given, you know, the hiccups early on and continuing, I mean, I use it a lot, but it's still not super reliable, and I'm hoping that changes when I get it.
See, it's been rock solid. People say that, and it's been rock solid for me during the betas. It's crazy. I just pick it up, I talk to it, and Siri, take me home. Siri, show me this. Siri, I have become so lazy, I cannot type on an iOS device anymore.
Yeah, I know. I use Siri a lot in the car, and so it's dependent on my cellular connection, and my cellular connection is not always something I can depend on.
AT&T.
So that's really why it's in and out for me. At home, on Wi-Fi, at the office, it is good. And it has been amazingly good on the betas. But back to the original comment, I think that why are they not connecting everything immediately? I think they're just wary to put too many pieces in motion. I think they're strategically trying to, brick by brick, make this a better experience. And I think that probably at the core level of what do we want to do with Siri ultimately, I mean, that's like, what do we want to do with the iPhone? There's obviously stuff in the labs that's way ahead of what we have in our hands as of Friday, but I'm sure there's stuff that Siri can do they're just not doing yet because it's just not.
I know what you want to say. You want to make some crack about the day that Siri became self-aware in Linda Hamilton's voice.
I'm walking around that very carefully. I want her to hear me.
Nice. So have you tried I mean, I'm not the biggest sports fan, but I asked it when the first NHL game would be. It told me. I asked it, you know, what G-rated movies are playing nearby so I could take my godchildren. You can start asking it pretty complicated questions, comparative questions that involve multiple parameters, and it's fairly good at giving you good results.
Yeah, I tried the sports thing maybe 2 weeks ago. I asked, like, you know, did the Yankees win tonight or something like that? And it gave me the score, and I would like the little scorecard, and I was like, okay, that's good. And then I asked a different question about the game, like who pitched, and it just gave me the same information. And I asked a different question and gave me the same information. So I was kind of like, okay, well, you know, it's beta, whatever. But I did try a movie question, and that really worked well the other day. And I really haven't. it's one of those things where I've gotten very accustomed to doing things with Siri that I know Siri can do well, and so I have not yet integrated the new things that Siri...
Wait, Siri is teaching you how to talk to her? Siri is training you?
Well, there's certain ways that it works really, really well, and, I'm not just talking about enunciation. I mean, like, it's great for reminders, it's great for,
Yeah.
quick text message. I have not had a lot of luck with dictating like a full email or having things read to me. There are certain things that I've just stopped doing with it because it doesn't really work.
I've dictated posts on iMore. Don't tell anybody.
Okay, I won't tell.
Yeah, no, it is. The thing is that it's good enough that when it fails, you get very frustrated. If it failed, it's again, it goes back to that thing about the mouse getting the food once in a while. If it never got the food, if Siri never worked, you'd move on. If it always worked, you'd never worry about it. But it works just enough to drive you crazy when it doesn't.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like, think about my use case is mostly when I'm driving. So when I'm driving, I've got something I need to get out, and if it doesn't work, it's just, forget
purple dot, purple dot, purple dot, nothing.
Yeah, and it's extraordinarily frustrating because by the time I see that it has failed, I forgot half of what I said.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair, and I think we're at the beginning still of Siri. You can kind of see where Apple wants to go, but they're lining up partners, they're brokering deals for information, they're setting it up. It doesn't do anything like Google Now. I think we spoke about this before. Google Now is trying to do the predictive stuff that Roger McNamee talked about at Palm, where like it doesn't like. Right now with iOS, it has this new feature in the phone, and we can mix these two together because they kind of go together, where if you get a phone call, just like the camera button in iOS 5.1, you can slide up the phone icon and reveal these new options, which is remind me later, which will give you a reminder to call the person back, or you can reply with a message, which if you remember, Bill Gates and Ed Colligan showed off with the very first Windows Mobile Trio at CES, I think like in 1990 or something. But these phones are so smart. They know where we are. They know what the traffic is. They know where our appointments are. Why does Siri have to wait till I get the phone call telling me I'm late to reply with a text message? Why can't Siri pop up an alert and say, there is absolutely no way you're going to get cross town for that meeting with Nickelfish. You should really send him a text telling him you're going to be late. Would you like me to update the routing for you and get you there as fast as possible?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the brass ring, right? Is the phone that does the hard thinking for you so that you can do the other thinking that you need to do. It's taking the details out of your day and really taking the role of personal assistant, like that ancillary person that's always with you, that is reminding you of the things that you're just too busy to remember, That
nagging mother who you really didn't want to have around you, but now you desperately need.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff that, Palm had showed off was awesome. And that's
what Google's doing now with Google Now, and Apple is not competing in that area yet. Well,
again, I think that they are playing. It's a long game for them. They're not going to change things up or introduce too many things at once. We know this. We know they're not going to bust out a million new things with a single release because they can bust out 5 new things and everybody still buys it, and then they can take the other things they didn't do and make them stronger to their liking.
Oh, the first taste is free. You want another taste, you gotta come back.
I mean, I would love to see use numbers on Siri, usage numbers, because I don't know how many people are actually using it.
There's Zooey Deschanel, there's Samuel L. Jackson, there's John Malkovich, and there's what's his name, movie guy?
Yeah,
Scorsese.
Yeah,
and Santa's using it too.
I wonder out of the iPhone, out of the Siri-abled public, what percentage is actually using it on a daily basis? What percentage relies on it? Because I feel like if the entire population was using it, they would probably be releasing things more quickly.
If they are under pressure.
Yeah, I think if they were like, wow, this is the biggest feature we've ever rolled out. Every single person with an iPhone is using it. We've got to continue adding stuff. I think they would divert resources to it, and we would see faster iteration as far as Siri is concerned. But I think it's still not quite a pet project because obviously it's a huge feature. But I think that it is still it's not front and center because it's not the only way you can use your phone. The predominant way that you use your phone is not using Siri.
I keep whispering Siri open Seth's airlock, and it's just not working. I'm very disappointed. All right, so let's move along a little bit here. Guided access. I kind of figured out something with guided access that I like. I was getting some questions about why isn't there a guest user mode on iOS? You know, on the Mac, you can boot it up just into Safari. There's this idea that your iPad is this personal thing, but other people are going to want to use it. And guided access is also single app mode. You can basically set it up so that you triple click the home button, you hit guided access, you put in a PIN code, and it's locked in that app. And you can stop the ability to leave that app. You can stop the ability to use certain controls. And I started doing that with Safari. I would just lock it in Safari, give the person my iPad, and I didn't have to care anymore. They couldn't get to any of my personal data, any of my apps. They could just sit there and surf the web. They were happy. I was happy. And it took a little bit of pressure off me, Seth.
Yeah. I think that guided access is going to be a huge deal to parents with young kids. Obviously.
Mall kiosks, teachers, special needs teachers.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I worked with children with autism for years, for like 6 years, prior to doing Nickelfish full time. And they used to have dedicated single-use devices that cost hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and they were heavy and clunky and had horrible battery life. And the kids basically wore these giant brick-like units that they would take around with them, and they had pre-programmed sounds and things that you could poke on just for them to communicate. And stuff like the iPad is so far beyond that, and for like a fraction of the price, if you can take a device that is that flexible and customize it in such a way with something like guided access so that there is little to no accidental input or confusion, the opportunities that children like this have to communicate and really, enrich the world around them, it's staggering.
It becomes an incredibly low-stress environment for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very big. And like you said, stuff like kiosk mode, like I could definitely see companies that maybe have built custom kiosks, gone through hardware companies and had huge things built, just saying, why would we do that? This is so much easier. We can roll this out in half the time and at half the cost, and just build the housing for it as opposed to have the entire thing commissioned.
The other thing, I want to move along to iPhone 5 because we're starting to run low on time. But the other thing I wanted to get your take on, because you have the design background and you co-host Iterate along with the very handsome Mark Edwards, is Apple seems to have done a lot to streamline the OS. And I didn't really realize this when I started writing my review, but you know, in the past when you'd move between apps, it'd be the carousel animation, and it was good because it would spatially orient you that you were leaving one app and opening up another one. But it took time, and you'd have to go back to the other app afterwards. And now they're doing so much with share sheets. I was in email, and someone emailed me an app, and I tapped the link, and it didn't move me to the App Store. It just opened up an App Store sheet right inside Mail. It downloaded the app, closed the sheet. I was still in Mail. And it does that with messages. It does that with email. It does that with the photo picker. More and more, Apple's bringing their apps, not like actionable notifications, but actual was it instantializing? I forget the fancy word that you would use, but it's putting an instance of that app in another app, and it made the entire OS so much smoother and quicker to me. Yeah.
I think those kinds of tweaks, as people become more comfortable with the more advanced features of the later operating systems, I think those kinds of things really enhance the way that people like us use the phone, because there's always going to be somebody who backs out to the home, with the home button for every single thing, and that's fine.
My mom, my sister.
You said, like, that's the anchor. That's the safety net, right? That's the
escape hatch.
Yeah. If things get hairy, I can push this one button and everything goes away.
Eject! All hands, abandon ship!
But no, the stuff you're talking about is great. I'm really happy to see things like that, because nothing makes me angrier as I'm trying to do things quickly on my phone, and with quicker devices, I end up learning to do things more quickly than having to wait for something stupid that could be handled in 2 seconds, taking 30 seconds and taking me out of an experience. So I think integrating these things at that level is good. I would still like, and we've said this before, I'd still like something more like the Windows Phone contract and Android's, what are they? Intents?
Yes.
Yeah, that stuff. I mean, That's where we need to get to. I know sandboxing and all that, but like that experience of like interconnectivity between everything on my phone. I've put this stuff on my phone. I want it on my phone. Let those things talk to one another.
I wanted to get into the lack of information density in the new App Store search and Apple's ability to give us cards in Safari and cards in the App Store, but not cards for task switching. But I think we'll save that for next week and move on to iPhone 5 because it comes out on Friday, comes out 2 days hence. And I'd like to get just a little bit of feedback about this from you because we put up our iOS 5. If you want more on iOS 6, we have a giant review. Took me hours and hours to write it. I'd be really happy if you took a look at it. It's iMore.com/iOS-6-review, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But we also put up a buyer's guide because we got so many questions, and you think it's one phone, but it's not really. There's a lot of options, and I just want to go through them really quickly with you and get your take. The first question is, should you get an iPhone? I mean, I think the iPhone is great for a lot of people, but there'll always be people who the iPhone just isn't a good choice for.
Yeah, I mean, that's what do you want? I always say to people, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to do? Are you going to tinker with it? Do you want to customize every little thing? Then the iPhone's not for you. I just had this conversation with somebody today on Facebook. One of my like a brother-in-law of a sister of somebody was
it's
like,
a Southern thing, no names.
I can't. I don't know what the actual familial relationship is. However, we always get together and we always talk about Apple stuff because he's a huge Apple fan. So he says to me on Facebook, you know, I feel kind of like lemming-like with this. Like, I don't, like, sell me on this. You know, I don't know what I should be doing. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. And I'm like, listen, do you want to spend your time playing with stuff and fiddling and getting set? Or do you want to just have the phone work the way you want it, the way you expect it to, and move on with your life and get things done? Like, I went on more than that because I did, but that's really it for me. It comes down to a very clear dichotomy. Do you want to have the phone be a part of your life and do things with it, or do you want to play with your phone?
See, my conversation was very different. My mom actually said, you know, should I be getting the iPhone? And I said, no. You have a Nokia candy bar phone or a Samsung candy bar phone, and that's fine for you. You haven't. She likes the iPad. It's big. It's got a big screen. She can use it. She just thought I should have an iPhone, but we went over what she would do with it, and there was no reason for her to even have a data contract because she wouldn't use it. So I think there's a whole class of people. Like, yes, there's a class of super user who might be happier with Android, but there's also still, as much as we say the time of the feature phone is over, that people just don't need any more phone than that.
Yeah. I mean, probably a large percentage of iPhone users aren't even using all the stuff on their phone. I would say most.
So the next question then is, if you decide you do want to get an iPhone, should you get the iPhone 5? Starts at $200 on contract, goes up in $100 increments from there. Or are you okay getting an iPhone 4S for $100 or an iPhone 4 for nothing? I mean, at what point? I always say you're going to pay $2,000 over the course of your contract. So you might as well get the best phone you can now because it'll last you as long as possible. But there are some people who have to pay rent, who have to expenses, and they just don't have that upfront cash.
Yeah, I always tell people, get the best thing you can right now. If you can afford the newest, latest thing, then get it, because it's going to be great for this year and probably the year after it. If you can only afford the thing that came before it, especially in this case, the 4S is a very able device. The 4S with iOS 6 is a fantastic device.
We're using it right now.
Yeah, if that's all you can afford, you're going to be real happy with that. But if you can afford to go a little higher and get the new phone, you're gonna hang on to it even longer. You know, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I think that's really true. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Guy English: Darth Vader black or Stormtrooper white?
Vader black. I love white devices and I love holding them briefly, but I feel like when I see the screen edges, I can't focus on the content and I'm too distracted by the edges. So Vader black.
You know, my iPhone, I had both a black and a white iPhone 4 because the white one came out so much later. We decided to actually review it. So I had both of those. And then I went white for my iPhone 4S because I usually switch Apple puts out two of the same phone. I buy one of each different color. It feels like a newer phone to me. So it's my turn to get a black phone. Some people like the look of white, but some people think it looks like a panda, that you have the black screen, that it's distracting. There is no problem with it aging. I've had the white iPhone 4 since it was launched. Still looks as white today as it did then. The UV coating is really solid. I've never been distracted by it. The advice I give, and it sounds corny, is close your eyes, picture yourself holding an iPhone, look at what color it is, and then buy that.
Yeah. It's ultimately, they're both going to be gorgeous. You know, like I have specific visual needs, which is why I have to have black devices, but I love the white ones. I just don't think I'd want to have it in my hand all the time.
All right, so 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes, 64 gigabytes. This is a tougher question now, Seth, because there is iCloud and Dropbox and things that let you keep your content nearline, but there's also this big honking camera that takes 1080p video, 8 megapixel stills, and now 23 megapixel panoramas.
Yeah, past 2 years, I've gone 16, which everybody is like, you're crazy.
You are crazy. I didn't even know that.
I go 16 because I stream everything. I don't load any music on my phone. I just stream everything. Pandora, my subsonic server, like everything is just streamed. The only thing I have locally on my phone is podcasts. However,
okay. Yes. However,
this year I went with a 64.
I think I have a guess why.
Yeah, because I have a child coming in about a week, and every single person in my life basically said, oh man, you're going to take so many pictures and video. And I just thought, yeah, that it probably makes sense to do that. I bumped up Amy's phone too, so she's getting a bigger one. So we're going to have beefy phones with a lot of storage so we can take a lot of pictures and video.
So you and Amy are both going 5s?
Yeah, yep.
High fives.
Going to Verizon, so I told her I'd get her a new one too.
Oh, that's nice. You're splurging. Or probably she's letting you have a 5. She was gonna, if you only got one, she was gonna take it. But if you got 2, if you agreed to have 2, she'd let you have one as well.
No, she got the 4S last year.
Okay.
She was on the significant other upgrade path.
Like Georgia's husband.
Exactly. But last year I got her the 4S because she had like a 3GS before, and she was like, "This just is not going to work for me." So we're going to Verizon. We're both getting 5s, and I told her she's not getting a new phone next year.
Unless she decides otherwise. You raise the next good point. Verizon, if you're in the US, Verizon, AT&T, or Sprint, and I know you said you're going Verizon, but it came out after the iPhone 5 launch that they are only using a single radio on a single chip, which means that they cannot do, well, there is no voice over LTE yet. So what a lot of Android phones do is they use 2 radios, and they have one radio doing LTE data and another radio placing the voice call. Apple's using one radio. So on AT&T, if you're on LTE, it'll downgrade to HSPA+. If you are on Verizon or Sprint, for another year in a row, you cannot do simultaneous voice and data. Or as they will tell you, you can do simultaneous voice and data as long as you're on Wi-Fi. Did that give you any second thoughts?
No, not really, because quite honestly, I don't really get a lot of phone calls. I don't make a lot of phone calls. The reason I'm going to Verizon is because when I do make that 1 or 2 phone calls a week, I need to actually complete them. And so the voice data thing, it's not really much of a showstopper for me. I don't find myself in that position. I think maybe once, honestly, one time in the past year, I've been somewhere where I've been using the network and said, hold on a second, let me look that up. And
honey, I'm going to call you back. I'm watching the cat on the piano. Just give me a second here.
Yeah, it's not a concern to either of us. And I explained that to her. We went for a walk one day and I told her, and she's like, why are you telling me this? And I'm like, just so if it happens, you can understand. And she's like, I don't care.
Have we met? I don't care about your nerdy. Look, you have your nerdy podcast and I have my 1 hour of silence and we're both good. Leave me alone.
It's not something I'm concerned with. I can see how people would be concerned if that's a definite use case for you, but it does not affect me in the slightest.
I'm just hoping that they have because the original Android phones, if they fell off AT&T, you sometimes had to reboot them to get them back on LTE. So if they were on LTE and they fell off of LTE, you'd have to reboot them or do some shenanigans to get them back on LTE. The iPad 3 has been very solid for me. It goes down, it comes back. There's a few seconds of delay, but that's a tablet. If I'm on a phone, I really want that to be uber smooth. So I'm hoping that Apple, they've got 2 antennas in there. They say they've got this incredible radio built in. I'm really looking forward to testing that.
Yeah. My Verizon LTE experience with the iPad has been outstanding, and that is a huge reason as to why we've even considered switching.
All right, so now you know what carrier you're getting. And if you're outside of the U.S., you're almost always you're on a GSM carrier if you're getting an iPhone, and it just depends on which carrier has the best service in your area. If you're in England, I don't know, I don't understand. How can England is an island? You go, all of Asia is bathed in LTE faster than the speed of the sun, yet they cannot cover one island with even 3G yet. So there's only one LTE carrier, but everyone should ask your friends, ask your people at work, see who has the best signal in your area, and then go with that. It's the only advice I can give you. Apple Store versus other stores. Where should you buy? My usual advice is if you have an Apple Store anywhere in a convenient, like anywhere within a convenient distance, you should buy at an Apple Store because they'll take good care of you. They'll help you learn, set up your device if you need to. And they will, I've gone in, I once had, and I think I've told you the story. I once had my iPhone hit by fireworks on New Year's, and it destroyed my screen. And I went in there, they didn't even charge me for it. They gave me a stern talking to. They had no idea who I was, gave me a stern talking to about taking better care of my devices, swapped it out for me. I put in my iCloud password, and I walked out with an exact replica of the phone I walked in with within about an hour. And there's just no one else, no other phone, no other store that can do that for you yet.
Yeah. When I inquired with our small business team, a couple of weeks ago, I said, listen, we're going to be switching, my personal line. We're switching carriers. Is that something you guys can do? As soon as they said, oh yeah, we can do that. I was not even the thought in my mind as to why I would go to a carrier store.
Yeah.
If they handle whatever you need there, Apple Store is your best bet. If you've got one near you, you will not get a better experience or get help like you'll get there. Like they will sit with you until what you need is fixed.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't be a dick to them. Some people go in there yelling and screaming and they don't do anything to help you and you get angrier. But if you walk in there, if you're polite, if you look, like you're contrite about what happened, they have broad leeway to make their customers happy, which is why they have such good customer loyalty. So if you can, I always say Apple Store, because the alternative is paying money to a big box, what are they called? Geek squatters who really, could care less about being there and have no idea how to fix your stuff anyway. No offense to any geek squatters listening, but it's true. No, they know. They'll tell you. They don't enjoy that company any more than we do. All right, so I guess that wraps it up. So Seth, give me the final tally. What iPhone 5 are you getting?
I am getting a Vader Black 64 gigabyte Verizon model.
Nice. I am getting a Vader Black 64 gigabyte Rogers model. There was some bad news for me though, Seth.
What
To
happened?
combat scalpers, Apple will not. Every year, Rogers offers me $100 off to re-sign for a 3-year contract. And every year I give them the equivalent of the carrier finger by buying it unlocked, because $100 is not that big a deal when you're talking about the difference between $650 and $750 or $750 and $850. And I'd rather just not be beholden to them, even at my own expense. But this year, because there was so much scalping last year, people lining up just to sell them overseas, the Apple Store will not be selling carrier unlocked phones in retail, only online. And I did not know that. They did not make that clear in advance, so I did not pre-order. So I'll be lining up to get a freaking carrier locked off full price iPhone, because I'm still not going to sign with those people again.
Well, do you know when the unlocked models will be available for you?
I'd have to order one, and then it's like 1 to 2 week shipping. I think now it's 3 to 4 week shipping.
See, I was going to say, you probably have a 30-day return on a new policy, right? You could probably open a new account and still get your unlocked model within a month and just cancel.
Maybe. I'm just going to ask Rogers to unlock it because I believe they will for $50. And if they don't, I'll ask one of those gentlemen on Twitter who knows how to unlock stuff on carriers.
Okay.
And it's just because they are so bad at customer service that I don't feel like rewarding them in any way possible. I will pay extra to avoid rewarding what I believe is a customer hostile business model.
Yeah, well, they always say vote with your dollars.
I am. I'm at my own expense. I am, at my last breath, I spit at thee. Con!
That's how it goes. It's at your own expense. That's how this works.
They task me, Seth. They task me, and I shall have them.
I know they do, buddy.
All right, sir. So I will be lining up either at the Fairview Point Claire Apple Store or the St. Catherine Street flagship Apple Store. A bunch of us have t-shirts like every year. We have boxes of iMore t-shirts. Leanna will be somewhere, I forget what area she's in. She's 2 hours south of San Francisco. Allie is somewhere outside Chicago. We have people all over the place. I believe Alex and Richard will be at the Regent Street Apple Store maybe. There will be a lot of iMore people. So if you see any of us, please say hello. I don't know what time I'm lining up. Last year I lined up at midnight, but I think the combination of pre-orders and no carrier unlocks, that means no scalpers, will be shorter lines. I won't take a chance. I'll go look. But I'm not positive yet. We had a pajama party for the pre-orders. We had a countdown party in the iMore forums, forums.imore.com. I lost my power. I went dark. I have backup generators. Don't worry. Yeah, we're on life support here. We had a countdown party for the iOS update, and we're going to have a standing in line party. So we'll be giving away prizes, gift certificates, t-shirts, stuff like that. So make sure you show up on iMore on Friday morning.
Indeed.
Now I'm Vader Black.
Yeah, you are. You're looking spooky.
I see dead people. All right, Seth Clifford, sir, where can we find out a lot more about you?
You can find me on Twitter and app.net. I am Seth Clifford on both those networks. You can catch me here and on Iterate with Rene and Mark. And if you want to check out the work we do, please visit our site, nickelfish.com.
I feel like I'm the Blair Witch Project now, Seth. So you can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find me at imore.com. You can find all of us at iMore. You can email us at podcast@imore.com, or you can just leave a comment on the show when it goes live. You can find all of our shows at mobilenations.com/shows. And you know what else, Seth?
What?
One power failure. Two power failures.
Need my power on. Don't joke.
All right, nice. Thank you very much, Seth. Thank you very much, chat room. Thank you very much, Hydro-Quebec. We will see you guys. I will probably do a show on Sunday. It depends on how far along I am with my review, but if not, I'll see you guys again on Wednesday.
Sunday shows are good. You should try to do that.
I'm trying to. I have a guest lined up tentatively, but again, it'll be a timing thing.
All right.
Yeah, we had some good shows. We had Guy English, we had Clayton Morris from Fox News, and we've had, I'm blanking on our first, Jim Dalrymple from The Loop. It's been a good series. All right, I'm done.
Okay.
I think when the Mac Pro is on, I think I have 20 minutes of surplus time.
You better save your files and shut yourself down.
Now I want to sing Public Enemy. Shut him down, shut him down, shut him down. All right, Seth. All right, chat room. We love you. You're here every week for us. We really appreciate it. Have a great iPhone 5 launch. Make sure you come join us for our launch party.
Yeah, guys.
Good night, everybody. End of line.